Ah, we said, Colman, what a pleasure, brother.
Oh, such a pleasure. Mucho
I'm
gusto.
I'm truly happy. Mi placer. I'm truly happy for you because this has been your year, and you've been nominated for the Golden Globes for an amazing roasting, and also for the Color Purple. And I remember when I saw the Color Purple many years ago, and my first question is, how do you embrace a character like Rustin? The very few people knew on like here on the States, and such an importance in such a like really important moment in American history, not just Black history, it's American history. How do you
Yeah,
embrace a character like that? That's no well known.
I embrace him even closer to myself. When I first found out about Bayard Rustin and his impact on America and history was when I was about 19 years old. So I sort of like always had him in my heart and in my mind, understanding who he was and how he was navigating spaces and being such a strategic thinker and organizer. So he was always very private from me. And so by the time years later, when this opportunity came to portray him, which is a rare feat, because how often does an actor get to play one of his heroes? This was the opportunity, knowing that President Barack Obama and Michelle Obama knew that this would be their first narrative feature film because they understood his impact and significance when it comes to civil and human rights. Barack Obama said there would be no Barack Obama if it wasn't for Bayard Rustin. So I embrace that wholly and fully because I think that he's such a fantastic human and character that has been marginalized in the history books. And I think the first thing that people say often is like, "Oh, I feel bad that I didn't know who he was." I'm like, "Don't feel bad. No one did."
Mhm.
I said, "I happen to." I'm sorry, one second. I happen to. One second. There's a. Cool. I happen to have had the privilege to know who he was early on, but now it's such an impactful, significant moment for me to lead this film and shine a light on him and show this guy and all his interesting complexities. And so now he lives, and now there will be no more after this film. No one will ever say who is Bayard Rustin ever because it's on one of the greatest platforms with Netflix. So people are seeing it in every single country possible. And I hope people inquire more about not only history, because this was not intended to be a dusty history lesson. It was intended to inspire people, ordinary people, to take charge of their destiny and their history and to own their power and to form coalitions and to right wrongs together, so I think that was his mission in life. He was always an organizer and I don't want to use the word activist because I think that it was something more complex that he was. He was really, really curious about people and interested and gave his life to service for our country. So I like to say he was an activist. He was someone who was devoted to service for our country.
But also, what I love that you did along with George C. Wolfe is that you gave it a human perspective. Because usually when we see these people, we only see what they did as a leader. We only see, the good things they did. But here we see him as a human, as a gay man who was in a really turbulent years. He was black and gay, so he has all the disadvantage at the time, and he has this mindset then none of those things, it was focused on creating something. It doesn't matter that Martin Luther King didn't had a fight with him. It didn't want it that the top, the 10 leaders didn't want him. Like, man, he fought with so many things still.
It's about perseverance.
Yeah.
He persevered even though there were rooms not set up for him to exist in, even though there was possible harm against his body and his livelihood. He went forward with a very positive, charismatic spirit to demand his rightful place in the world and at tables and in rooms. And so I think that's something so admirable. I love the fact that the telling of Rustin is not about trauma at all. Because, a lot of times it's about trauma or keeping someone in history in marble, to a marbleized version of who they were instead of making them weird, interesting, complex, funny, messy, all at the same time, and having a commanding presence and crafty mind. I think that was the opportunity to actually show a human being Because I think that we show more complex human beings in this way, who are ordinary people doing things that are extraordinary, we can actually find ourselves in it.
Yeah.
We can actually, you and I, Ruben, can see ourselves as someone who feels like, oh, maybe I can do something. Maybe it's not too taxing for me to do just something right in front of me, to right some wrongs, to join with other people who have this ideology and belief that we can make this country a little bit better. So it's a boyish, jubilant, sexy film about organizing.
Why do you think that he wasn't that famous character in history, that we are now getting to know him? Because possibly because the figure of Martin Luther King was so powerful, or everything that happens after the march. What do you think that many people don't know about Rustin, but they know about Martin Luther King and people around him?
I think history chooses its heroes. You know, you have a lot of people who are so significant and impactful in the civil rights movement. Many leaders of their own groups. You have groups like SCLC and SNCC and NAACP and so many others. But history chooses its representation. And I think history chose Martin Luther King. Yeah. And then because it shines such a bright light on Martin Luther King, and I take nothing from him, he was exceptional. And the way he led in many ways. But there were people right to the right and left of him. There was Ralph Abernathy, there was James Orange, there was Diane Nash, there was A. Philip Randolph. There was a whole lot of people. But history chose its heroes. So for me, I love the idea that when people see our film, they'll not only see about and learn about Bayard Rustin, but they'll learn about Ella Baker. They'll learn about Dr. Anna Hedgeman. They'll learn about Rochelle Horowitz. All these many people who are still living. Eleanor Holmes, who became a congresswoman. You know, they will find all these people who did so much work for us and devoted their lives to service. I think that's the win that now we will start to investigate and interrogate history a bit more.
Even it's interesting because when George C. Wolfe has told two stories about Black characters, they were famous. The character that he did 2 years ago with Viola Davis, and now Rustin. And in a platform like Netflix, it just probably spike history in countries like mine, like the American Republic, that we have Black leaders that we never talk about them. Because if you see our three fathers, there's one Black, but we always focus on one that is white. And it's not about skin.
Isn't that something? Yeah.
It's interesting because now I think that when a Dominican or someone from Cuba or someone from any country that they have Netflix, they can be curious about the Black leaders and what participation they had in their country history.
I think that we have a great opportunity now with filmmaking and filmmakers and producers is to really, how can I say this? I've had a conversation about this the other day. The idea that George even said it, my director, he said, it doesn't have to look like you to be about you. Mm-hmm. And I think that that's something that has to be ingrained in more human beings in terms of storytelling. I think people of color, at least in my experience, I'm so used to seeing things that are not about me and finding myself in the story. I just watched The Zone of Interest the other night. I can find myself in that story and looking at the humanity of people and the inhumanity as well. I can find myself. But I think others, sometimes they don't know how to find their way into our stories because they haven't been conditioned that way. They've been catered to that everything must be about them. And I think once we understand it and say collectively, it doesn't have to look like you to be about you. You can see yourself in other people's stories. Mm-hmm. I remember years ago, me and a group of friends, all Black, white, queer, straight, you name it. We were in Alaska, of all places. And we had a choice to go see one movie together. And there's a choice between, I don't know, some of the movies. And then we all decided Hustle and Flow.
Wow. Yeah. It's right here for a pimp.
Yeah, exactly. So we go see this movie. We have an exceptional time. And we come out. And my friend Michael, white guy, I think he's from the outskirts of DC. He musical theater guy, and he says, wow, I would have never saw that movie and I loved it. I said, we were like, why? And he said, well, I just don't think it's marketed towards me. And I said, well, I don't think Cold Mountain is marketed towards me, but I will see it.
Yeah,
because I think I can find myself in the story. But that's a bigger discussion about making those choices to be curious about someone else and trusting that that story has something to do with you. So I think that hopefully culturally we can shift and really sort of like that's what I think is an interesting opportunity for people, especially when they're screening films, to actually investigate and be curious about someone else's story. And trust me, if it's well written, you will find yourself in it.
I agree. I agree. And now talking about shifting, now we go to the color purple, and it's a whole different atmosphere. It's a different colors. It's a different movie from Rustin. And I'm curious, did you feel any challenging because the movie was a huge success in the 80s? There's a musical. They've been plays. They've been so many things about the color purple, and now they casting you for this film. Did you feel any challenges about showing something different that it was shown before in the 1987 movie?
I'd like to say no, because I had to divorce myself from any production I've ever seen. And I've seen them all. I've seen the film at least 100 times. I saw the musical twice on Broadway. I knew the book, but I had to go back to the book because the book is the source material to find out how the color of purple lives in me and with our collaborators now. I feel like we are standing on the shoulders of many people who've given so much sweat equity and lifeblood to the color purple. So we're part of a tradition. So I knew that if we just focused in on what we're creating and the way we're creating, we're going to create something that is evocative, provocative, and brand new based on what our agreements are. I had to find the Mister that lived in me. I couldn't think about Danny Glover's brilliant Mister. I had to think about how does he move through my body and in my voice and language, and how can I create an arc for his character that makes sense to me? So again, I had to. That's some work to do, but you have to fully divorce yourself from anything you've seen before, in order for you to attack it as you attack any new play, any new script, and make agreements with your collaborators that this is the color purple for us.
What it means to you? Because I was reading the Oprah had a conversation with you, approach to you, and I guess you want to hear what else you can bring to this project, because we have a new director, we have a new star like Fantasia, but you are surrounded by so much talent, black talent like Taraji P. Henson and yourself, and it's a great balance in this film, which I love. I have seen twice. How do you create this balance between the new generation and the already veterans and great actors like you and Taraji P. Henson?
Well, thank you. The first thing I would say is that Oprah said to me after I was cast, I think after we had the production, after we filmed, she said to me, "You were always our first and only choice, because we know that no matter what Mr. does, no matter how violent and heinous he is, there will always be good in him. You can always find the good in him if you play him." And I guess that's a great compliment. That I could play some vicious characters, but you'll always find, because they know. I think they all know that I'm interested in finding someone's humanity. I'm never judging a character from the outside the way another person would. Everyone says, "Oh, Mister's the big bad. He's the villain." I don't think so. I think I'm inside of him. I can tell you, he thinks that the world and the systems are his villain. He thinks being a black man in 20th century America is the villain. I think that, and this is why he hurts other people, because he feels very small in the world. So for me to understand that and develop this complex character in this way, so we can understand why a person abuses another. For me, it wasn't just, I didn't want to play a character who I felt like just woke up one morning and decided to backhand women. I wanted to see what are the steps to get a person there. What do they need? What are they lacking? What do they want? At the end of the day, there's like, I build any character, and I had to find the way I loved Mister, which is a task. You have to, I'm very much a feminist. I'm very much someone who believes in healthy spaces and for people, but for me, I guess it's my job as an actor to interrogate those parts of our humanity or inhumanity. And I don't know, I knew that it lived in me in a different way, and it lived in my castmates as well, that we made agreements that were based on what we knew to be true and what questions we had. and how we want to give more, I guess, the language is really investigate trauma, really investigate generational trauma, toxic masculinity. These are things that are now key and things you can call on and say that that's what we're investigating that I don't think they have words and language for in 1985. You know what I mean? This is very progressive in our thinking. So, to really go back to the genesis of the book and look at the relationship between, Seeley and Sugar Avery and things like that. We have more tools now to really clarify what these relationships were and things. So I think that was our attempt. And I feel very wonderful about it. I feel it's a beautiful film and it has all of our hearts and souls on it.
How could you let go a character like this? Because like something has to stay with you because you say that you're a feminist, you're a pacifist, you love being in peace for yourself. But this is the opposite of you as a real person. How do you let go a character that is the opposite of what you represent as a human being?
I wonder if I do let them go. I wonder if I think every character stays with you in some way. Not that you're going to unleash the Kraken in that way of like violence and things like that, but to understand them stays with you. I think every character stays with me in their journey in some way. I think the idea, more than likely the opposite end of him, the redemptive arc that I was always very clear about, of like what his dreams were, his aspirations, his drive, what happens if he doesn't get it. That stays with me. I feel like I know I have a huge embrace for Mr. to hug him and give him love that he was not given. He was taught a way to be in the world that was toxic and horrific. The way he treated women, horrible. Maybe it stays with me knowing that I want to always create safe spaces for people. It transforms in another way. And I think I'm an actor that I make sure that like whenever I'm even performing this and research and doing the work, that I make sure that I knew I had to go to the darkness. The first thing I needed when I went to Atlanta was an apartment with lots of light. I needed lots of light. I needed good food. I need great meals because I need to take care of myself, my mind, and get back to all this joy and light and love in order to go into the darkness and play a role like this. And I needed all of it. So I think that characters all stack up in there, I don't know, on the sides of me and on my shoulders. They're all there, from Rustin to If Beale Street Could Talk to, Candyman. They're all with me. They're all a part of me in some way. And for me, it shows a myriad of ways of being in the world and men that I'm interested in, I don't know, channeling through me. I think art calls on you. It calls on the person. They call it, Mr. called on me to portray him and give him a different breath and light this time around. So I don't know. I think they stay with me.
I have to be honest because your character in Euphoria, it stays in my mind. Like it stays with me. Every conversation that you had with Zendaya characters, like everything, every interaction that you two had, and everything because you're a great actor, man. And then I see you in Rustin, like so loose, so energetic, so focused. And now I see you in the color purple, like with the different colors, being mean, being misogynist, and in my mind, I have you in the three little characters. It's hard to choose which was my favorite, but because one is very speakable, the other one is energy, and this one is more about, I don't know, like a character-driven person. And I just need to say thank you.
Oh, first of all, thank you. I think listen, I've always hoped to be in service to character as an actor. I come from the theater. I would build characters from the ground up. I feel like I use whatever I have, mind, body, and soul, to create the spirit of a person, to imbue that person with light and love and complexity in their own way. I make decisions on how they speak, where their voice is pitched, their body, how they use their body. Ali is a very different character than Mr. And Mr. is a very different character than Bayard. So, and I feel like because choices have to be made, decisions. I've never been an actor that just sort of showed up, learned my lines, and I think that's lazy. I have to really do the work and build a full character that lives and exists in space and time. And I think that that's what this body is. It's a vessel to be used and challenged, which is why I feel like I'm malleable. I can do musicals. I can dance. I can sing. I feel like I've always wanted to be an instrument to the story. And I think that, even when I meet people, which is really flattering, they always say, well, you sound different. Your voice isn't that deep, or you use your body more, or you're skinnier, or you're older, or you're younger, or you smile more. But yeah, because I make decisions for the character. And hopefully it's harkening back to, I don't know, actors that I feel like I've been inspired by, like Philip Seymour Hoffman or Christian Bale. Or, you know what I mean? I feel like there's such incredible actors who know how to put it in their whole body, mind, and really deliver a soul that is stirring and rich and has its own colors and complexities.
A couple months ago, I watched this film, 1001, and I still have it in my heart.
Mm.
And you mentioned about generational trauma, and that movie is about generational trauma. What is your definition in these times about generational trauma?
I think it has to be, I'll quote a line from Color Purple from a song from I'm Here, where she says, I have to look you straight in the eye. I think we have to look at it straight in the eye and in the heart in order for us to move forward. That's any sort of trauma. I said, otherwise it stays with us. It stays in our bodies. It stays in our actions. We're walking around with it. Sometimes it walks in the room before you do. It makes decisions before you're able to bring your full self. So I think that this time around, I know that we're very interested in really examining and laying to bear what generational trauma is. You can see it from Lou Gossett Jr., who plays my father, to me, to Corey Hawkins, and how Corey's trying to break it and try something new. He's attracted to a woman who's going to take him on a very different journey to be a softer man. And I think that's what, it's deconstructing the things we've been given or not given in America in many ways, and why we feel like we have to be blustery and big and whatever the definitions of a man is. And I feel like it's now time for us to really do the work together. We have more language for it. I think back then in 1909 and in The Color Purple, they didn't have language for it. They were just going, doing what they thought somebody told them to do. Now we have language and we can get better.
I agree. Colman, brother, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate it.
And it's good talking to you, man. Thank you.
Look, brother, the feedback that you're having of all this nomination and all these, articles about you and interviews, I think it's well deserved. You've been in the industry for so many years, and I'm truly happy to see your name in those.
Thank you. I appreciate that. I really do.
I just hope to see more, because
Thank you. Spread the word. All right.
Come with me.
Okay, man.
Bye,
Take
brother.
care. Bye-bye.
Bye.